All right, guys, we're back. Part 2. I'm ranking all of the DC live-action series, all 19 of them. This is number 10 to number 1. If you didn't see Part 1, please check in the description below. Check it out. It was really fun making this list. It was very difficult. I did give myself some parameters to go by, some rules. I listed them all in the first video, so check that out. Like this video, subscribe to the channel, guys, and please put in the comments below what your rankings are of these DC shows. Maybe you've watched them all too. I don't know anyone that really has watched them all, but if you have, please put your list below. I would love to see it. All right, guys, let's get on to number 10.
I've got a power inside me. I can command anyone to do my bidding.
You two hold hands.
That thing ain't even fun.
It's kind of fun.
And as a big fan of the Garth Ennis, Steve Dillon comic of the same name, I was very excited to see this show created by Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg. I think the biggest problem with this series is the same problem with a lot of shows on AMC. This is a show that needs to be completely balls to the wall insane and be as crazy or even crazier than Amazon's The Boys, which was also written by Garth Ennis and also produced by Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg, which is not feats that can be reached on a cable network. It fails to live up to the high bar it sets, which makes this a fun show, but not something I would tell someone to go seek out. If you like the comic and you would like to see it in live action like I did, give it a watch. But as the show got on, I felt like they just took things that were great in the comic and they stretched it out as far as they could go, and it took a lot of the things that I loved about the series and it kind of soiled them for me. I don't hate this show. I don't hate it. I think it's extremely well shot. It's extremely well acted. The soundtrack of the show is very good as well, but my biggest problem is with the fact that they had to stretch everything. And I think this show would have been much better if it was on a streaming service, but when it came out, streaming services weren't what they are today. And I think Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg learned a lot from this show to make The Boys, and that's why The Boys is as great as it is. But I think this was a good stepping stone for them, and if you do want to seek it out, I'm not going to stop you, but this isn't a show I would ever really recommend to anyone.
Alec Holland was investigating illegal dumping on the swamp.
Hello?
Dr. Jason Woodrue.
CDC's in town.
There's no way that my accelerant is responsible.
Probably the show I was least looking forward to watching due to all of the negativity surrounding the series that was canceled long before anyone had a chance to judge it. I was very surprised with how much I enjoyed this Cronenberg-esque body horror superhero series about the dark side of this small town and the magic in the swamp that surrounds it. The show feels truly unlike any other show on this list. There is little to no humor. All of the actors take the show very seriously and do a great job of not taking the show over the top, and instead creating an enjoyable series that will not be for everyone, but I think will find a following in horror fans in the near future. They are putting the show on the CW due to everything going on in the world. They don't have a lot of new shows for the fall, so they're taking some shows from streaming that were already canceled. Swamp Thing was one of the first to be announced to do that, and I'm hoping it does find a following. But watching it on the DC app, it's a pretty violent and like grotesque body horror series. So I don't know how much they really need to cut. I hope not a lot, and I hope it does well because I would love to see a season 2. It has very good acting. The effects are great. Maybe it's because of how it's shot, because it's shot in a lot of fog and a lot of dark, so they're able to cheat stuff with the effects, but the effects are really great in the show. And like I said, it's unlike any other DC series. It is very dark. It is completely humorless. It is more a horror show than it is a superhero series. And I would recommend this to people. An example of not judging a show on its first season and giving it a chance to expand. Supergirl originally started on CBS, where despite initial high ratings, it soon failed to retain fans, which caused the show to travel over to the CW, joining their lineup and officially greenlighting the superior second season. With the additions of Clark Kent and Lena Luthor, Melissa Benoist and company were really able to get their footing on their new network. Having a Supergirl show that just mentioned Superman without actually showing him casts a big shadow that was easily solved by giving the Kryptonian cousins a chance to share the screen together. The rest of the cast continue to give it their all, and the introduction of some 90s TV legends in important roles helped make the show feel special. While the past 2 seasons have spurred some fans, including myself, I really enjoy the new added dynamic of having both Luthors, which had the same added effect as adding Superman did.
We must put faith in ourselves, but instead, we look up to him with big, glassy eyes because we think he's invincible. It's my duty to dispel the world of that notion. And when he dies, they will finally wake up and see him for what he really was. A false god.
At least he's a good man.
He is not a man! I was the man of tomorrow, not him! Not him!
So it's all ego then?
No, it's science. I want to see if the Kryptonian pretender can bleed.
John Cryer getting the chance to finally redeem himself for Superman 4: The Quest for Peace is great, and I love his take on the character. Lena Luthor has become a much more interesting character to me than I gave her credit for initially as well. I look forward to seeing if the new Superman spin-off series will have a big effect on Supergirl, positive or negative.
My name's Dr. Niles Calder. Please nod your head if you can understand me.
So what is this place?
My home. A safe place for you, others like you, to heal.
I've been admiring those freaks of yours for quite some time.
Are we really the best people to hunt a supervillain?
Hell no.
A cross between Umbrella Academy and Legends of Tomorrow. Doom Patrol is a very well edited and a very well shot comedy with a strong amount of heart. The biggest negatives I could give are that Cyborg kind of looks like he got his outfit from Party City. The show seems like it's based around the idea that Cyborg would be the missing piece to this group that would bring them together and make them stand apart. It doesn't come off as shoehorned in as Harley Quinn in Birds of Prey. While I do like Jovian Wade's performance more than Ray Fisher in Justice League, as his character has a much more interesting arc and plays off his team in a way that makes him both a straight man and pseudo-leader, but also a naive kid just trying to figure out who he is. Although this is a step in the right direction, I'd say they have yet to really crack the code that is a live-action Cyborg. That being said, this is a very good show that is one piece away from being the flagship series HBO Max and DC Universe desperately wanted to be. This series is definitely not for everyone, which is why it's only ranked at 7, but the people who really like this show, really like this show.
Black Lightning was the savior who kept our streets and our schools safe. He was hope personified. But he was also Jefferson Pierce, my father. He tried to keep his promise to my mother. Said that he saved more lives as the principal of Garfield High than he ever did as Black Lightning. But without Black Lightning, violence in the streets by the 100 gang multiplied.
Growing up, one of my favorite series was the show Static Shock. As I grew up and started getting into comics, I learned about the character of Black Lightning that always felt to me like a mature version of Static. So I was very excited when Black Lightning was announced. This show brings a strong hero-family dynamic, which although on paper seems similar to the pseudo-families created on most of these series, it's actually very different and brings a strong realism to the show. Add in the fantastic cast and strong timely themes of police brutality, race, sex, and community that make this the most strongly layered and complex DC show on the CW. Season 2 was a bit weaker than Season 1, but Season 3 showed this show still has a lot of promise and continues to get better, unlike our next entry on this list.
Run, Barry, run!
What happened here?
Just your everyday kind of bad guy shootout. My name is Barry Allen, and I am the fastest man alive. A friend recently gave me the idea for a new name, and something tells me it's gonna catch on.
The first spin-off in the Arrowverse, The Flash brought Barry Allen to the silver screen in a way many could have never dreamed. The first 2 seasons of The Flash are 2 of the best seasons out of any of these series. The writers found the character of Barry Allen right away and were able to establish a team that helped define a format adopted by most future DC series. Flash's original crossovers with Arrow also helped bridge the TV gap and help make this connected universe what it is today. If not for Barry Allen, most of these series would not have connected as well, and the character continues to be one of the strongest in the verse. Later seasons have started to lose focus, and while the character still has his moments, this is a series that has definitely seen better days. And although still a flagship series, its title as Best Current Arrowverse Show has quickly been succeeded by a recent entry in the Arrowverse. While the series still has a few standout episodes every season, the overall villains and the characters on the show have gotten weaker and weaker as the series has gone on, and unfortunately, it is not the bastion of hope in the Arrowverse that it used to be. While Barry Allen is still amazing, I do think work needs to be done to bring Flash to being the great show that it once was.
People like to tell me things, those deep, dark, naughty little desires that are on their mind.
And you're not marrying this human stain because you're actually in love with him, right?
Oh, God, no. Oh, my, I can't believe I just said that.
Must be something about his face.
Going into making this list, I was pretty confident that I knew what my top 5 would be, and I honestly didn't expect any of the shows that I had to watch for the rankings would actually make it that far. I watched the pilot for Lucifer back when it originally aired on Fox. While I liked the episode and found it a fine introduction, I just couldn't see it as much more than a clone of Castle with a devil twist. On the surface, it seems to have a very similar premise to iZombie, a cop procedural with a weird eccentric character with a supersized secret and the world around them. Lucifer, the show, and the character are far more complex than that, though. The show may start as a procedural and does keep that construct throughout its run. It is more a show about angels and demons in the human world. The cases they cover are almost the B story, as the forefront of the show is almost always Lucifer himself and the ramification of the devil living in the human world and coming to terms with finding out who he truly is. This show plays up the character and actually humanizes the fallen angel, along with other characters and their reactions to what's going on. Being stuck on Fox for its first 3 seasons caused those seasons to be stretched out a bit more than needed, and the show has its fair share of filler, especially season 3, which is the longest and weakest season. Although that season does have its highlights. Season 4 is the first on Netflix and shows the series at its full potential, perfectly blending the cop drama with its otherworldly characters, creating something truly unique and fitting of ranking with shows such as Charmed, Buffy, and Angel. Tom Ellis' Lucifer is a character so strong and so its own that they had no choice but to add it into the universe, and he actually appeared in the Crisis crossover.
Oh, you're gonna love her. She's pretty much up for everything.
Always a pleasure to see you, Lucy. It's time.
Excuse me, ladies. Seems like you're not the only ones who want a piece of me. I'll see you later. Johnny! Well, I'd like to say it's a pleasure to see you on my earth outside my club, but it's not.
And that's actually what set me on the path to include Lucifer on this list, as well as the other 2 Vertigo TV series. It was all because of the fact that Lucifer popped up on Crisis. I was like, well, if he's on Crisis, I kind of want to count him, and if I count him, I should count Preacher and iZombie as well. So I'm very happy I did, because Lucifer is by far the show I did not expect to love as much as I did. I have rewatched the series twice already. I love the whole cast. It exceeded every expectation I had and then some. I really think this show is only going to get better. I can't wait to see what comes next.
And you are?
Rip Hunter. I'm from East London. Oh, and the future.
I've been tasked with assembling an elite team to travel through time, to capture Savage before he grows into the monster he becomes. Of all the people who ever lived, I chose you 8. I certainly hope that you won't let me and the world down.
I can get behind that.
The show that constantly redefines the meaning of jumping the shark, The Legends of Tomorrow is maybe the most interesting spin-off in the Arrowverse. What started out as a strange cross between DC's own Suicide Squad and Doctor Who, the Legends are mostly made up of a motley crew of fan-favorite heroes and villains, and the show quickly establishes the expendable nature of the characters and the rotating cast of the series. Season 1 has its ups and downs, but I think it definitely finds its footing in Season 2. Just when the show seemed like it outstayed its premise, they did something truly remarkable. The show pivoted into being about much more than time travel with the introduction of Matt Ryan's Constantine and introducing the world of magic, angels, and demons. This not only was able to make the show feel fresh and slightly less episodic, it also gave them the opportunity to cover things in the DC universe many thought they would never see. I find Season 4 as the weakest season, but it still has some of the wildest things I've ever seen on a show. Season 5 goes even further, and while I don't like everything going on, I really love seeing these characters in a way I've never expected. The show's biggest problem is that sometimes the writing can get very lazy. Zari's storyline in particular I find is a big weak point that gets way too much focus. I'm sure this is not an easy show to write, especially in later seasons. I love Legends of Tomorrow. I won't really hold how much I enjoy this series. There's just something about it that you don't really see in a lot of the other shows. I think Doom Patrol probably gets the closest. This show, because of the fact that it's in the Arrowverse, is able to do something that you don't really see in a lot of the other shows because they're able to bring in characters from Flash and Arrow and Supergirl and bring Constantine a home when he had none. The stuff that they've done with Constantine in particular in the past 3 seasons is the best that we've seen of his character. And the introduction of him brings about a lot of stuff in Crisis. Like some of my favorite moments in Crisis are with Constantine, and some of my favorite moments of this show are with Constantine. Are the past 2 seasons weaker in writing than seasons 2 and 3? Yes. Yes, I would definitely say that the writing is better in seasons 2 and 3 than they are in seasons 4 and 5. But I think season 5 was a major improvement over season 4, and I see a lot of promise for this show coming further. Yes, there are some characters that have left that I wasn't really happy that they left. I wasn't really happy that Brandon Routh left. I would like to see Wentworth Miller come back, but the whole cast is great, and a lot of the actors that they have come in as replacements are fantastic. I think Nick Zano is a really great addition to this cast from season 2 to current. I already have talked about how much I love Matt Ryan in this show. I think that a lot of these characters have an interesting dynamic. The biggest thing about this show is one of the things I love about Doom Patrol, which I actually didn't get into, is that they take some of the most obscure characters that very few people know, and they make them something very interesting, something that you would have never seen. They do something in Doom Patrol with the street that you're like, oh wow, I never thought I would see that. And they do the same thing with this, with the character Gary. There's some stuff they do with him that you're like, I never thought I would see that. There's a evil fairy godmother. They get trapped in a TV series at one point. There's another Mr. Rogers. It's very, very weird. Very weird. I love every second of it though. And I do recommend Legends of Tomorrow if you haven't seen it. Like I said, it's not for everybody. This show redefines jumping the shark with every episode. They'll have actors come back and play different roles. The way they travel through time, I think, is a lot of fun. They did an episode with George Lucas. They've done episodes with the Ringling Brothers, and they've done episodes with pirates and in the Revolutionary War, and they've hung out with Jonah Hex a few times. And I really enjoy this series. It's kind of everything I want from like an Arrowverse spin-off show.
Lori Blake, FBI. You know how you can tell the difference between a masked cop and a vigilante?
No.
Me neither.
There was a vast and insidious conspiracy at play. If I told you about it, your head would explode.
Who are you?
Maybe, I'm Dr. Manhattan.
He lives on fucking Mars.
You curse too much.
Mankind is ready for change.
This was the hardest show for me to place on this list. It was honestly very hard for me not to put this in number 1. I rewatched the entire limited series to not see if I liked it, but to see if my feelings for the show were overblown. Rewatching the series not only reinforced how I felt, it strengthened my love for this bold attempt at making a sequel series to one of the biggest graphic novels of all time. I will say without a shadow of a doubt, this is the best made season out of any series on this list. The direction, cinematography, acting, score, editing, everything feels less like a series and more like a 9-hour movie, which shows HBO was the perfect place for Watchmen all along. I know the mystery box format and some of the themes are a turn-off to some, but I am not one of those people. In the long run, it makes the series infinitely more rewatchable than anything else on this list. The themes are not only timely and thought-provoking, they continue a lot of the same themes the comic had while translating them for a 2020 audience. None of this would matter if not for a solid cast, and the cast here goes miles beyond solid. With 3 Oscar winners in pivotal roles, along with a fantastic cast of character actors and rising stars, Watchmen perfectly weaves new and old characters into a show so good, I almost cried that season 2 will likely never happen. I really don't have many negative things to say about the Watchmen series. I highly recommend it if you haven't seen it. I can understand if some people don't like it, but I am a huge fan of this series. I think that it is more movie than show. I think it's the strongest season or series, if it never gets a season 2, than anything else on this list. But because it is a limited series that only had 1 season, I think that that is what holds it back from being number 1 for me. Because I think if it had a stronger run, it would definitely be a number 1. But I don't think it's fair to just make one great season and then say, hey, that's my favorite, when a lot of these other shows and the number 1 show on this list were very good for a long stretch of time, while this was very good for a short stretch of time. I am a huge fan of this series, and I do really hope they get a season 2, because if it gets a season 2, it might jump to number 1. But right now, here we go, guys. The number 1 show in DC, my ranking. This is my opinion only. This is my favorite DC show after rewatching every show and watching shows I haven't seen before, watching all of them in this time where I had a lot of free time. Out of the 19, here's my number 1.
Oliver Queen. Man who channels his hubris and anger and calls it strength.
The show that started it all. You wouldn't have any of the previous shows had Arrow not taken off in the way it did. Originally intended to be a 5-season show, its success led to 3 extra seasons and a 170-episode run, the longest out of any series on this list. This show quickly became the benchmark of which all DC shows are measured against. The term "as good as Arrow" is now a common phrase when talking about any of the previous series. Some may say the show went on 3 seasons too long and it long outstayed its welcome. While I do agree the later seasons were not as good as season 5 and did change the show by the end of its run, I think it was necessary for the show to evolve along with the universe. Like Iron Man, you needed Arrow to evolve and react to the world around him in order to strengthen the other series. I think Arrow is very hard to not be number 1 on this list. The only thing that came close was Watchmen, but like I said, 170 episodes against 9. Even though I think the 9 episodes are amazing, they're all top tier, out of the 170 episode run of Arrow, I think there's at least 9 episodes that I like just as much as those in different ways, because stylistically it's not going to be the same, but this show is the benchmark that all of the other series were put against. And this show is the reason for this list. If Arrow did not take off in the way it did and change comic book shows, when the biggest comic book show before this, and I believe it is still the longest running series when you go by episodes for a DC show, is Smallville. And Arrow completely changed the game. I thought Arrow, when it first came out, was going to be, oh, it's going to be like Smallville. And they were like, no, we're going to do something completely different. We're going to use Green Arrow as the base, but we're going to take elements from Batman and from other heroes, and we're going to mold our Oliver Queen into something truly unlike something we've ever seen for a DC TV series at the time. Stephen Amell is Oliver Queen. He's become synonymous with the role. I think that's a reason why Green Arrow is not really talked about as becoming a DC movie, is because a lot of fans would kind of be upset if Stephen Amell was not the character. I know when the first season came out, some people were critical of his acting, saying he was stoic and he didn't really seem like he was really into it, but that was part of the character, and he's come out and said that, and I think his evolution as a character was fantastic. Also, this show kind of invented him having the sidekicks, you know, Diggle, Felicity, bringing other characters along the way. This show also introduced Barry Allen's Flash, Ray Palmer's Atom, White Canary. It brought Ra's al Ghul into the universe. John Barrowman's Black Archer is probably the most layered villain in the Arrowverse, and he started right here and then went off to doing many other things. It all comes from Arrow, and if you haven't seen Arrow, I'd be very surprised, but you should definitely check Arrow out. Even with all of its seasons, 170 episodes, I understand that 170 episodes can be daunting for some now, but I definitely recommend it. Yes, this show is very long. Yes, it has 22 episode seasons. Yes, at times it can meander and it does seem to be stretched a little thin at times. But at other times, it more than makes up for that in some of the inventiveness that this series brought to the rest of the universe. And I love Arrow. Arrow is a show that I see myself rewatching and rewatching and rewatching for years to come. I actually rewatched most of the series for this, and I still agree that I love season 1. Season 2 is amazing. Season 3 is very good. Season 4 kind of dips. Season 5 picks it right back up. And then season 6 and 7 aren't exactly what I wanted, but I don't hate them. Season 8 is very good, and it's being completely different from any of the other seasons. I know some people didn't like it being almost like an Infinity War-like setup for the Arrowverse, for Crisis on Infinite Earths. And it was kind of like must-watch viewing for Crisis. You might be a little confused about certain things had you not have watched the final season of Arrow. And yes, I know some people were upset with how the show ended and such. I really did enjoy the ending, and I really do hope they make the Birds of Prey spin-off series that they set up through the final 2 seasons of the show. All right, guys, that was my list. All 19 shows. I'm very tired. I really need water. My mouth is so dry. You have no idea. Put down in the comments below, please, your rankings. I really want to know what you guys think about each show. If you'd like to see any other lists, I'm thinking about doing a couple ones. I was thinking about a Marvel TV show series. Let me know what you guys think about that. I was also thinking about doing different actors and directors. I was really interested in doing an Adam Sandler series, maybe a Jim Carrey series, perhaps something about Matt Damon, Martin Scorsese, Quentin Tarantino. There's a lot of different actors and directors that I could mess around with. So I would be very interested in doing that. Let me know in the comments what you guys would like to see. You want to see a Jennifer Lawrence rankings? I'll do every Jennifer Lawrence movie. I don't know what's going to be number 1. Maybe it's Joy. I don't know. Put it down in the comments below, guys. All right, guys, I'll see you next time for another video.